Come with us to the land flowing with milk and honey. Jonathan Bernis and his family want to extend a personal invitation to you to join them in Israel in 2014 for the Jewish Voice 2014 Israel Tour. You'll experience a land filled with rich history and culture as you walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible come to life. You'll visit Jerusalem and the site of the ancient temple, in addition to many more amazing sights. While in the Holy Land, Jonathan Bernis will also give you the opportunity to rededicate your marriage vows on the Sea of Galilee. And he'll lead you in biblical teachings at historic locations you've read about in the Bible. Visit our website, www.jewishvoice.org, or call 800-299-YESHUA right now for more information. And make plans to come with us to Israel.
Incredible. Well, welcome everyone to our Jewish Voice live webcast for September 9th, 2014. You were just listening to, I think, one of the greatest violinists in the world, a dear friend, Maurice Sklar, and it was called Hebrew Melodies. It's actually off of a CD called Hebrew Melodies, and you can order the CD right from your screen. You don't have to miss any of the webcast. Well, we have two topics we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be focusing on, and that is the threat of ISIS and the current situation in Israel. News that you won't hear anywhere else. Well, certainly the perspective that you'll hear tonight. The eyes of the world are on the conflict between Israel and Hamas and ISIS, the fastest growing terror threat on the planet. How does this tie into the last days? Well, before we tackle this really critical topic, here's a few cartoons to illustrate our focus for tonight. Chris, you can't see this, but this is a great one. It's a terrorist strategy meeting, and it says we can get the White House to attack ISIS if we can connect ISIS to the Tea Party. It's actually the Iraqi leadership. If we can connect it to the Tea Party. Let's go on to the next one. This is President Obama saying, right then the gloves are off. If ISIS attacks Baghdad, we'll pull our forces out of America immediately and withdraw to Hawaii. It's a cute one. And then you can see Hamas in the sandbox. It's a little game called Hide the Rocket. This is a funny but true illustration, and then the proverbial pig putting on lipstick, and it's labeled Hamas. And those are the two topics we're going to be covering tonight. We're taking your questions live. You can call 888-777-0782 and talk to our guest tonight. Ask your question again, 888-777-0782, or you can click the form below or tweet us using hashtag JVWebcast. Again, tweet using hashtag JVWebcast or call the toll-free number 888-777-0782. We'd love to hear from you. Well, joining me tonight from Israel, live from Jerusalem, actually, is Chris Mitchell. He's an author and award-winning journalist. He's also CBN's Middle East bureau chief for the last 8 years. Chris, welcome. I understand you just returned both from Iraq and from the Syrian border. Thanks for joining us in the wee hours of the morning. What is it, about 3 in the morning there?
It's 3 in the morning here, Jonathan. That's right. So I'm here with my cameraman, Jonathan, and but we're glad to be here. It's a privilege.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Chris, let me jump in with my own question here. I saw the report you filed from Iraq, and we're going to be showing it in just a few minutes. But I want you just to give us an eyewitness account of what many are telling us is the worst terrorist threat the world has ever known. The most organized, the best funded. They have state-of-the-art military intelligence. This is a very, very serious threat that not only Israel and the U.S. is facing, but the world is facing. Give us your update.
Well, it was an extraordinary experience to be there, Jonathan. We were there back about 2 weeks ago. We spent about 10 days. And that was the second visit we had been. We had been there earlier in July, and we went again back in August when things got actually worse. After the first attack, we went when ISIS took control of Mosul, and then we went back after they captured many of the towns like Karaba and Bartilla. These are some of the Christian villages in Iraq. We were very close to the front lines, about sometimes 9, maybe kilometers away from ISIS and their positions. We spent some time with the Kurdish military that was called the Peshmerga, and they're really the boots on the ground right now, protecting many of the refugees, protecting Kurdistan from this onslaught of ISIS. And we also had the opportunity to talk to many of the people firsthand who were evicted from their homes, who were threatened with either conversion to Islam or death. And we had some of these harrowing experiences, not only from Christians, but from a religious sect called the Yazidis. And it was really moving, quite emotional to hear their firsthand stories of how they had to face ISIS. and they were given four choices. They could either leave, or they could convert to Islam. They could pay what's called the jizya tax. It's an Islamic tax for non-Muslims, or they could die by the sword. And we've seen many of the horrific videos, both the two journalists that have been beheaded and many of the other atrocities. I mean, sometimes literally hundreds of people have been massacred by this terror group, which has really captured the attention of the world. And as you saw in those cartoons, a lot of people are waiting for the White House to catch up, perhaps, to the American public or the world at large.
We're still trying to figure out a strategy, Chris. Chris, from what you can discern, how big is ISIS? How many are we talking about? And also, there's fluctuating numbers on how many people they've killed. Can you give us information about that?
Well, I think as far as their strength, I've heard numbers of 10,000 or 20,000, but sometimes what they do is they gain their strength by, like many of the Sunnis that are giving them support, that sort of when they come into a town or a city like Mosul, they're the ones that actually, give them the kind of support they need on the ground. Just, a group of 10 or 20,000 is not perhaps enough to capture all this land and control it. So they need the help of the local population. We did hear stories there, Jonathan, where some of the peoples, the Christians in particular, their houses were marked with a certain letter, so they knew exactly where the Christians were. Sometimes when the Christians were evicted, then the local population, many of the Arab Muslims in that area, would come in and steal from the Christians. And so I think, and they did that for the Yazidis as well. So I think what happened is that the local population is actually supporting and giving help to ISIS. The number of people have been killed, that too is certainly an uncertain number, but there have been massacres of, I think when they captured the Raqqa Air Force Base in Syria, I think there were nearly 700 Syrian soldiers that were marched to their death. And that's happened, I think, in Mosul as well. So literally thousands of people have been killed by ISIS. The exact number, I'm not sure anybody knows. But what they do, Jonathan, is that they try to use social media and these horrific videos to actually terrify the population. And fear is certainly one of the weapons in their arsenal. It's not only psychological, but I believe it's a spiritual weapon they use to try to intimidate and terrorize the populations. So sometimes these videos are shown and people know ISIS is coming, and it literally makes them want to leave their ancient homeland.
Just terrible. We have a report that Chris filed from Iraq, and then we'll be taking your calls live. 888-777-0782. Just once again, 888-777-0782. We'd love to hear from you. Let's take a look.
It looks like a scene out of the Bible, a modern-day Exodus. Tens of thousands made the trek from Mount Sinjar all the way here to the United Nations refugee camp. For some, a 2, 3, even 4-day journey. Most of them came with just the clothes on their back. And out of the multitude, each one has a story. When ISIS attacked Sinjar, home to most of these Yazidis, Guli Udaida, a name which means God giveth, said it felt like the end of the world.
When they came, they caught some people and kidnapped beautiful girls and took them away. We escaped. The ones that stayed, ISIS killed.
When they got to Mount Sinjar, her son went back for food. ISIS captured him, shot him, took out his eyes and cut off his head. His friend buried him. When the Yazidis made their escape from Mount Sinjar, this is the route that they took. Mount Sinjar is about 100 miles away, and most of that is simply desert. They finally came to this desert road behind me, crossed the Tigris River, and made their way up the road to the United Nations camp. It took Kadar 4 days to make the walk. He had arrived just 1 hour before we talked to him.
We are in a desperate situation. We don't have any hope. We don't have any salvation. I am tired and I just want to get some sleep.
These 12-year-old boys, like Tassim, saw things likely to haunt them the rest of their lives. Razine remembers the mountain.
Many kids died on the mountain because there was no water. We escaped from ISIS because they wanted us to convert to Islam or be killed.
Just brutal threat. We have a call, Michael from Michigan. Michael, how are you tonight?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, you need to turn down, I think you need to turn down your computer, the sound on your computer.
My computer's down.
Okay.
This is the problem with your webcast.
Yeah, it might just be the internet. You have a question for Chris?
Yes, I was wondering if the ISIS could be the tribe spoken of in Psalm 83.
So, Chris, is this a psalm? Is this a fulfillment of Psalm 83, in your opinion?
Well, I know a lot of people think we're in a time of season where Psalm 83 might be unfolding before our eyes. I'm not sure ISIS is the particular group that will fit into into Psalm 83 scenario. I know there's several nations that are listed in that particular thing, but I think that ISIS is sort of an end time type of what we're going to be seeing, maybe perhaps more and more. And I know a lot of people think that ISIS may be fitting, or perhaps Islam may be fitting the type of antichrist system that's going to appear in the last days. I know we talked to Ken and Andrew White not too long ago, and we asked him a question about Revelation. And Revelation talks a lot about, believers being beheaded, and we're seeing that unfolding before our very eyes. Whether or not, Michael, it fits actually into Psalm 83, I'm not sure, but I think we're seeing things that we're going to be seeing more and more as the end times unfold.
Chris, this is clearly part of a scenario that the Bible talks about connected with the last days. Wars, rumors of wars, growing threats, world threats against Israel.
For sure. Wars and rumors of wars, you can look at the Middle East, you can look at Hamas, and Israel just fought a 50-day war. I was on the border in Syria just literally a few hours ago watching al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda group, fighting the Assad forces. You go a few hundred miles north, and you see Ukraine pitted between Ukraine and Russia, or these pro-Russian separatists. You look at ISIS. So definitely we are seeing wars and rumors of wars, perhaps like we haven't seen in quite a while. The good news, I guess, is Yeshua said that when you see these things, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. And I think this is a time for believers to be praying for sure, and to be girding themselves up, strengthening themselves in the Lord.
Be sober, be vigilant. This is clearly, for those that have eyes to see, Chris, that we're clearly in the last days. Janet calling from Maine. Janet, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Nice to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. Nice to be with you. My question was, where does ISIS get their military backup?
Well, Janet, I get a lot of their support from when they capture territory, and like they did probably in early July when they captured Mosul. They captured a great deal of Iraqi armament that was literally supplied by the U.S. government. So I think that has been one way they procured a lot of their weapons. When we were at the Peshmerga there on the front lines in northern Iraq, in the Kurdish part of Iraq, we were being told by the Kurdish military that they are outgunned by ISIS because they have better weapons, they have more weapons, and what ISIS can do actually with the Kurdish military is actually stay out of their range of their guns while shelling some of the Kurdish military. What has really changed the balance of power in that particular arena is the U.S. airstrikes. It really has blunted the advance of ISIS, and it's actually been able to push them back a little bit. One of the big battles that we were there, we weren't actually able to get close enough to see the Mosul Dam, but just a few weeks ago, ISIS had captured the Mosul Dam, and the Peshmerga, the Kurdish military, the Iraqi forces, along with the U.S. airstrikes, were able to recapture the dam. The reason that was so significant is because the dam itself, if it was ever destroyed, it would have unleashed a wall of water, estimates is 60 feet high, into Mosul, a city of about more than 1 million people, would have reached all the way to Baghdad with about a 15-foot wall of water. But also getting weapons from other places, and Turkey, I think, has been one of the countries that has allowed weapons to come into ISIS. My concern is that when ISIS, or God forbid they ever do get weapons of mass destruction, I think that would really be a game changer and would really change perhaps world history.
Chris, On 9/11, we were introduced to a group that most people had never heard of, Al-Qaeda. And I think people are asking the question, who are these people? Who is ISIS? Can you just give us a very simple explanation?
Well, ISIS was sort of born in the Syrian conflict in the last 2 years. They actually came out of an Al-Qaeda group, and they were, I think, actually had a different strategy than Al-Qaeda, and they seem to be even more barbaric and more gruesome, more brutal than, if you can believe, Al-Qaeda. And what they've done is actually establish what a lot of people, what a lot of Muslims feel has been their dream, is that they establish a caliphate. Now, a caliphate is sort of this Islamic empire where Islamic law, called Sharia law, is the law of the land, and that's what they're doing right now in different parts of Syria and Iraq. There was really a telling video several weeks ago when they actually captured the border crossing between Syria and Iraq. Now, these borders had been established for over 100 years, and now they were sort of like literally wiping them off the map and establishing their caliphate. And so ISIS, I think, has really captured the imagination of not all, but some Muslims when they have this dream of this caliphate. And so that's probably what the difference between groups like Al-Qaeda is that now they actually control territory. And I think that the territory they control has been estimated greater than Great Britain. So that, I think, why ISIS is such a threat, not only to the region, but to the world as well.
Chris, what is the end goal of these people? What are they after? What's their end game?
Their end game, it might sound outlandish to us, but they want to control the world. They want to dominate the world with Islam. I used to watch a cartoon many years ago with my son when he was younger, and it was called Pinky and the Brain. And basically the theme of each episode was that Pinky, both were rodents, but the brain was this sort of rodent with this huge brain. Pinky, his sidekick, would say, "What are we going to do today?" And the brain would say, "Well, we're going to take over the world." And they would sort of devise some outlandish way to conquer the world. But that's really the goal of what ISIS has, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Hamas. They're all sort of branches of the same evil tree, and they want to establish Islam. Now, this is what the Quran says, and they're trying to implement this sort of prophetic word of Muhammad that one day all the world will be under the subjugation of Islam. There's a principle in Islam, and it's called the House of War and the House of Peace. Now, the House of Peace is that part of the world that is under the rule of Islam. The House of War is that part of the world that is not under the subjugation of Islam. And so the House of Peace is always warring against the House of War, and it wants to dominate it and put it back under the control of Islam. That's why Israel is fighting its wars over and over again. That's why Hamas is firing thousands of rockets into Israel, because they want to capture what they call the little Satan on their way to capture the great Satan, which is the United States. And so they see the West, and particularly the United States, as the enemy that has to be subjugated and controlled by Islam. It's really like this battle out of the medieval times when Christendom, represented by the West or Europe and the United States, is under the assault of Islam. Historically, that's what the Muslim world has been doing, like it was after the gates of Vienna back in the 15th century. And I think we're seeing that battle unfold before our very eyes right now.
I think we are too. Chris, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about, and we'll take some questions from people live on what is the current situation in Israel, both with Hamas and in the north. We want to make Chris's book available also. It's called Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. This book is critical to be informed because history's final chapter will be written in Jerusalem. You can order this right from your screen. You don't have to go away from the webcast. So I really encourage you to get Dateline Jerusalem by Chris Mitchell. Stay with us to get more of your questions answered in just a moment.
Here at Jewish Voice, we are dedicated to proclaiming the gospel, the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, to the Jew first and also to the nations. One way we do this is by providing life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. Even more important than the physical relief our medical teams provide, it also opens the door for us to share God's love and the good news that Jesus is their true Messiah. Today, we are actively preparing for our next medical clinic. Our volunteer medical professionals will be providing a clinic for eye surgery, glasses, dental procedures, and specialized medical treatments, all free of charge to thousands of men, women, and children, many of whom have never even seen a doctor or dentist. As we prepare to go, the only question remaining is, how many can we help? Time is of the essence, and your generous gift today can make you a key part of impacting the lives of the precious people of Israel's lost tribes. Will you help? When you respond with a gift of $40 or more, we will send you the latest book from CBN News Bureau Chief in Jerusalem, Chris Mitchell, called Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. What makes this book different from any other is that it details the prophecies Chris sees unfolding before his very eyes as he reports from the front lines in the Middle East. With it, you'll learn how events making headlines in the Middle East fit into biblical prophecy, why Israel is in more danger than ever before, and how this will impact the rest of the world, and how you can be prepared for history's final chapter, which will play out in Jerusalem. In addition, as a thank you for partnering with us and ministering to the Gafat tribe, we'll also send you this Jewish voice teaching, Unlocking the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel, Keys to Understanding End-Time Events. This informative DVD with teachings from Rabbi Jonathan Bernis, Bible scholar Dr. Randall Price, and White House correspondent Bill Koenig gives new insight on the pivotal role that Israel plays in the return of the Messiah and on biblical prophecies that are being fulfilled right now and what it means to you. Please call, click now.
My guest live tonight, 3 in the morning for him, live in Jerusalem, is Chris Mitchell. He's the Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN and the author of this excellent book, Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. We're taking your calls live this evening, 888-777-0782, or you can click on the form below, or you can tweet us using hashtag JVWebcast, hashtag JVWebcast, or call our toll-free number, 888-777-0782. Chris, you are on site in Jerusalem. Israel and Hamas have just concluded a 50-day conflict. Are we going to see peace now?
No, Jonathan, I don't think we're going to see peace. In fact, the day there was an announced ceasefire, I think the leadership of Hamas said they were one step closer to reaching Jerusalem, which is their immediate goal. They want to destroy Israel and capture Jerusalem as the future of a capital of a caliphate, like we were just talking about. In fact, there's just reports now that they are already rearming and already rebuilding or starting to dig again those tunnels that had been destroyed by Israel, these terror tunnels that literally went sometimes a mile or more inside Israeli territory. So Hamas operatives, terrorists could come out to kill and kidnap Israelis. So I don't think from what Hamas has said, from what Hamas is doing, that there'll be peace anytime soon between Israel and Hamas on the Gaza border.
Chris, help people that watch CNN, read USA Today, understand the real situation there. So Israel, according to most media sources, is the aggressor. This is all a result of them not being willing to give away a little land for peace. And if they would just negotiate, this would all go away and there would be true peace. Talk about that picture that most media sources portray.
Yeah. Well, what actually happened, Jonathan, was in 2005, what was called the disengagement. Israel literally pulled out completely out of the Gaza Strip. At the time, there were about 21 Jewish communities, maybe about 9,000 Israelis who lived inside the Gaza Strip. And then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon made the decision, okay, we will pull out completely. This is a unilateral decision by Israel, and they said we'll get completely out of the Gaza Strip, and then we expect that there'll be peace. What happened is that Hamas rearmed, and they had control of the entire Gaza Strip. 2 years after the disengagement, they took over the entire Gaza Strip after Fatah, which is part of the Palestinian Authority, in a brutal coup. I mean, they were literally massacring Fatah members. So then from 2007, Hamas controlled the Gaza Strip. And since then, they fired literally thousands of rockets into southern Israel. And now, just in the last couple of years, they have missiles with longer range. They've reached out here in Jerusalem. And I've heard some of the sirens that have gone on in this city that's happened in Tel Aviv. So they can reach literally millions of Israelis under range. So what would any nation do in these circumstances? And what Israel has done actually has shown remarkable patience, suffering and absorbing these thousands of missiles. And then what they do is they try to pinpoint and target, perhaps these rocket launches, perhaps these terror groups, and in order to avoid civilian casualties. And finally, just a couple of months ago, when it was just too much to bear, when literally hundreds of rockets were being fired into southern Israel and central Israel, Israel decided to go in, and they called Operation Protective Edge, and to defend its citizens from these kind of rocket attacks. I think any nation, the U.S. would do that. If Mexico was firing missiles, if Canada was firing missiles, we think that would never happen. But if any nation had a neighboring nation that was lobbing missiles by the hundreds of thousands, they would respond. And they would probably respond a lot more forcefully than Israel did. I know much of the narrative in CNN and other groups, the BBC, I was watching the reports, and they failed to mention that what Israel did time and time again is at first that they would send leaflets, they would drop leaflets warning civilians to get out of harm's way. They would text them, they would call them on the cell phone. Finally, before they would actually attack the building, they would hit it on the building with a non-weapon, with sort of almost like call it a big firecracker, just to scare people out of the building before they would destroy it. And despite that, Hamas was actually on the other side, asking its people, telling its people not to get out of harm's way because they were using their own civilians as human shields and as propaganda tools. So when you saw the pictures of Palestinians going into the hospital, when you saw dead children, I mean, just tragic pictures and tragic stories. And yet it was Hamas who was using that as their own propaganda to make Israel look like the aggressor. And in reality, they weren't.
And the world keeps buying it. We have a call from Florida. Dee from Florida.
Here I come.
You there?
Yes, good evening, Jonathan.
Good
Hello,
evening. Good evening.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
You have a question for Chris?
Yes, I do. I wanted to know if you believe the U.S. is doing enough or the correct things to actually minimize or eliminate the ISIS threat.
If I understood the question, it was if the UN or is it the U.S. doing enough to eliminate ISIS?
The United States.
The United States. No, I don't think it's doing enough just yet. It has started, which is it's a good start. And like I had mentioned before, the airstrikes have really blunted the advance of ISIS. But I don't think it's doing enough to eliminate ISIS. One of the keys will be if President Obama decides, and I know he's going to be speaking to the nation on Wednesday, if they're going to go and attack ISIS within Syria, because that's where their main base is, that's where their sort of capital is, and I think that will be a determining factor if they're really going to be serious about stopping ISIS. And I know they've promised no boots on the ground. My understanding is right now there's maybe 1,000 U.S. troops, perhaps in Baghdad, Kurdistan, and maybe some special forces in other places. But it might require boots on the ground, as distasteful it is to a lot of Americans, just to be able to stop ISIS. And it will require the help of other nations. I know the Great Britain, and I know President Obama is trying to get 9 other nations together to fight ISIS. It seems going contrary to his policies for the last several years, and maybe contrary to his particular worldview and nature, but that's part of what's going to be required to stop ISIS.
Well put, Chris. Is this a result of pulling out of Iraq too early, and have we lost all the ground that we spent so many years in American lives to take in the first place?
Tragically, I think it is. I think when it really left a vacuum in western, I should say, eastern Syria and western Iraq. So when the United States pulled out a few years ago, it really did leave a vacuum for a group like ISIS to sort of metastasize and go. And we found out just several weeks ago when they attacked Mosul that the Iraqi army, trained by the United States, really wasn't up to the task. Many of them just disappeared, and that's where ISIS captured many of those weapons. But tragically, it seems like the vacuum left by the United States leaving Iraq has really allowed this to happen. There was almost a prescient and prophetic statement by George Bush, I think it was in 2007, and he was listing the consequences of what would happen if the United States pulled out. And we're seeing each and every one of them unfold. We're seeing people massacred, we're seeing refugees, and we're seeing these terror groups take territory like never before.
Exactly, word for word, what he said would happen. Linda calling us from Texas. Linda?
Yes.
Welcome.
I have a 18-year-old grandson here that wanted me to call in and ask, what is the best way that we can help? I mean, we know prayer. We know the understanding of financial need, but like people that don't have a lot of income, how can they help?
Thank you for that question. Chris?
Can you repeat that, Jonathan? That was something I couldn't hear it quite clearly.
She's asking how we can help, how believers can help other than prayer in the situation.
Well, I think prayer would be the biggest help right now for the people there. And I think help some of the groups that are helping the people there. When we were there, we saw groups, CBN, Operation Blessing is there on the ground, Samaritan's Purse is there on the ground. These are some of the ways, some of the groups that you can support that are there on the ground, providing shelter, providing food, providing something for these people that have literally lost everything. When we did part of our interviews there, and I'll show you a New Testament. This is a New Testament that one of the believers there in Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan, gave me. He was evicted from Mosul. He says in the right here, it says, I escaped from the terrorists in Mosul July 17, 2014. And what happened is ISIS literally threatened him with death. And they accused him of being a missionary and a spy. And so he's living under this awful fear of being killed by ISIS. And if you can imagine what it's like to be living in your home and in a neighborhood, and just a few days later, losing everything, losing your home. Sometimes your passports have been stolen, your identity papers have been stolen, registration for homes or cars have been taken. Sometimes even they were taking dentures out of this particular woman we had. They took the dentures out of her mouth and stamped them on the ground. This is sort of the brutality of what's happening to many of these people. So to your question, you can pray, you can support groups like Operation Blessing, Samaritan's Purse, and others that are helping them. And I think another thing you can do is help provide the political support and the military support, and that would be through the United States government. Perhaps call your congressman or senator to help, advocate that the U.S. will help militarily, particularly the Kurdish military, the Peshmerga. I think they're the ones that really are the boots on the ground, as I said before, that can help blunt this progress of ISIS. And so I think that politically, contacting your representatives is one more way that you can help.
Chris, does ISIS pose any immediate threat to the state of Israel?
Yes and no. We were up on the border, like I said earlier, and what the threat right now is al-Nusra is literally right on the border, just a few feet away from Israel right now. That's an al-Qaeda group, much like ISIS as well. They are in different parts of, they were on the Lebanese border, I've been told, and a little bit south of where we were today. I don't think they form perhaps a short-term threat to Israel right now. Right now, what's going on within Syria is a battle between these rebel Islamist groups like al-Nusra and ISIS against the Assad regime. That's their first goal. They want to destroy and they want to defeat the Assad regime and take over that land. Once that happens, then I think then it really does pose quite a serious and direct threat to the state of Israel. Israel is preparing. What they've done in the last year or so is that they've built a fence along the border between Israel and Syria. We were told that for years it was Israel's quietest border, and sometimes there was no fence between Israel and Syria in some places. But now they have a fence. They have also put, I believe, a division specially trained on the border to protect themselves and prepare for the eventual confrontation with an Islamist group like ISIS or al-Nusra. So Israel is getting ready for a potential threat, a more serious threat on its northern border.
Chris, what a challenge, though. You have Hamas in the south, you have the dangers in the north now with the Syrian border, and then you have Iran threatening to wipe Israel off the map as soon as they've developed a nuclear weapon. It's just, they live with terrible threats every single day.
Yeah, and not only to mention, Jonathan, Hezbollah on Israel's Lebanese border on the north. They have perhaps, as estimated, as many as 100,000 rockets, and about 5,000 of them may be able to hit almost any target within Israel. They're more sophisticated. They have more range than they were 2006, about 8 years ago during the Second Lebanon War. So Hezbollah also represents a huge threat on Israel's northern border. And like you mentioned, Iran is probably the greatest threat, and it's perhaps telling that Iran has really been quiet for the last couple of months or so, and yet these centrifuges enriching uranium keep spinning, and I think that is Israel's #1 threat.
A little tiny nation that continues to survive by the grace and faithfulness of God. We have time for one more call. Angela's calling us locally from Phoenix. Angela, are you there?
Hello?
Hello? Angela?
Hi. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I want to thank you so much for your ministry. My question is, it's my understanding that there are some Americans who have joined ISIS, and do we know who they are and how many, and how large is ISIS?
Chris, I think we covered that before, but just briefly again.
Well, yeah, we did cover the size of ISIS, and I've heard estimates of 10,000 or 20,000 actually members of ISIS. But I think one thing that's happened is that they really have captured the imagination of many impressionable Muslims or Muslims that are predisposed who actually want to join this kind of force. To Angela's questions about Americans, there are Americans that have joined. I know of all places out in Minnesota, I think in Minneapolis, there's been some Muslims who actually have died in battle. I think the estimate is perhaps a few hundred Americans that have joined ISIS. That's happened in Britain. And I think the danger many people believe is that these Americans, British, and Europeans that have joined ISIS have passports that will allow them to come back into their home countries and perhaps pose a terror threat to America, Britain, and many of these European nations. And so I think that's one of the additional threats that ISIS poses, is these homegrown terrorists that are joining ISIS, joining this jihad movement, and then encouraging others. And they're very savvy using social media, the internet, Twitter, and accounts like that to sort of propagate and sort of recruit others to join their battle.
Boy, the world has changed so radically. It's terrifying, except for those who believe our redemption draws near. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time in the middle of the night to join us. I really appreciate it so much. Appreciate you and all the work you're doing. I look forward to seeing you when I'm in Israel again.
Look forward to it, Jonathan. It's great to be with you.
Great to have you. Chris has written a fantastic book. You need to get it. It's called Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. This is from a man who is on the ground in Jerusalem, and everything culminates in Jerusalem. The forces of evil are focused on this tiny nation in this city because in the end, this is where Jesus returns to. This is the focal point of Bible prophecy, and Chris has watched this firsthand for the last 8 years. So I want to encourage you to order his book. You can do it right from your screen, and you won't leave the webcast. So this is something you need to understand the times. Up next, breaking news and insights from yours truly, and I do have an opinion. So Bill O'Reilly, move over. We'll be right back.
Here at Jewish Voice, we are dedicated to proclaiming the gospel, the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, to the Jew first and also to the nations. One way we do this is by providing life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. Even more important than the physical relief our medical teams provide, it also opens the door for us to share God's love and the good news that Jesus is their true Messiah. Today, we are actively preparing for our next medical clinic. Our volunteer medical professionals will be providing a clinic for eye surgery, glasses, dental procedures, and specialized medical treatments, all free of charge to thousands of men, women, and children, many of whom have never even seen a doctor or dentist. As we prepare to go, the only question remaining is, how many can we help? Time is of the essence, and your generous gift today can make you a key part of impacting the lives of the precious people of Israel's lost tribes. Will you help when you respond with a gift of $40 or more? We will send you the latest book from CBN News Bureau Chief in Jerusalem, Chris Mitchell, called Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. What makes this book different from any other is that it details the prophecies Chris sees unfolding before his very eyes as he reports from the front lines in the Middle East. With it, you'll learn how events making headlines in the Middle East fit into biblical prophecy, why Israel is in more danger than ever before, and how this will impact the rest of the world, and how you can be prepared for history's final chapter, which will play out in Jerusalem. In addition, as a thank you for partnering with us in ministering to the Gafat tribe, we'll also send you this Jewish Voice teaching, Unlocking the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel, Keys to Understanding End-Time Events. This informative DVD with teachings from Rabbi Jonathan Bernis, Bible scholar Dr. Randall Price, and White House correspondent Bill Koenig gives new insight on the pivotal role that Israel plays in the return of the Messiah and on biblical prophecies that are being fulfilled right now and what it means to you. Please call, click now.
We're moving now to our breaking news and insider insight segments. This is where we share news from Israel and the Middle East that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Well, the first thing I saw that's interesting today is Hamas terrorists have admitted that they're using human shields in mosques, in hospitals, in schools, near playgrounds, while requesting UN replace the U.S. as a key negotiator. So they're finally admitting under interrogation that they are using human shields, children, to protect themselves against Israeli missiles. And here's how it works, folks. They use human shields to provide cover, and when Israel does attack and children are killed, it draws international condemnation of Israel. And so they're admitting that they are using mosques to store caches of rockets. They're actually being trained in mosques, in schools. They're training in hospitals and hiding out in hospitals. This is absolutely deplorable. And now we have the smoking gun. We have over 30 tunnels that have been built by Hamas terrorists to actually invade Israel. Just 30 that Israel has blown up. There's many more. They don't. They're not able to find them all. And the day after the ceasefire ended, they begin again to build tunnels. And how are they building these tunnels? They're building these tunnels by using cement and other building materials that are brought in to build civilian facilities, to build schools, to build hospitals. And instead they're using it to build tunnels. And now with the smoking gun of all these tunnels, they're asking for over $500 million for what? To do it all over again. We have some pictures here, and I think a clip that you got to watch this clip. Are we able to buffer that and show it? Take a look at this clip.
احنا في واحد من الأنفاق التي يعكف رجال المقاومة في هذه المنطقة الحدودية على حفرها، ويعني كما تشاهدون هي ظروف غاية في الصعوبة رغم ما بها من هذه الظروف، لكن كما تشاهدون هي أنفاق ضيقة وليست مرتفعة كثيرا، وبالتالي تعتبر ظروف غاية في التعقيد. لكن اللافت ربما والمفاجئ هو أن هذا النفق يعتبر من الأنفاق التي يعني تشق ويتم حفرها حديثا كما تلاحظون، كأنه ما زال في طور الحفر، وبالتالي سنحاول إلقاء الضوء ما يحدث في الطرف الآخر من هذا النفق. واضح أن هذه مرحلة أخرى من مراحل إعداد النفق، وواضح أن هناك انهيارات ترابية، لكن واضح أيضا أن العمل ما زال جاريا. نحاول الوصول إلى أبعد نقطة ممكنة في داخل هذا النفق. يعطيكم العافية يا شباب. ممكن نصل لجوا لو سمحتوا. يعطيك العافية. كيف الحال؟ ايش بتسووا؟
نحن الآن في أحد أنفاق سرايا القدس التي بدأ العمل بها منذ اللحظة الأولى لانتهاء الحرب على غزة ومنذ إعلان وقف إطلاق النار. نحن مستمرون في العمل، بدأنا العمل ومستمرون، لا يعيقنا تهديدات العدو الصهيوني ولا تعيقنا.
لكن يعني هناك حرب وغارات إسرائيلية وقصف شديد في هذه المناطق الحدودية وسياسة الأرض المحروقة يعني، لكن يبدو أنكم تواصلون العمل.
نحن مستمرون في العمل، لا تعيقنا كما أسلفت تهديدات العدو ولا منع دخول الإسمنت ولا مواد البناء.
يعني هذه معروف أنها مناطق حدودية، يعني أنتم هذه الأنفاق لأي استخدامات يعني؟
نحن نجهز هذه الأنفاق للمعركة القادمة، إن على صعيد الهجوم أو على صعيد يعني إطلاق قذائف الهاون والمدفعية، وهناك استخدامات أخرى لا نريد أن نفصح لها، نترك المجال للميدان يتحدث عنها بعون الله سبحانه وتعالى.
شكرا. يعني واضح أن المعركة، يعني واضح مما سمعناه على الأقل بأن المقاومين الفلسطينيين يتجهزون لما هو قادم. بكل الأحوال هذا ربما يعطي انعكاسا وانطباعا وصورة لما يمكن أن تحمله الأيام المقبلة في هذه المناطق في قطاع غزة، خصوصا إن لم يتم تحقيق شروط ومطالب المقاومة الفلسطينية.
It's absolutely outrageous. Here they're declaring that they're building tunnels. This is according to Islamic sources. They began to rebuild the tunnels the day the war ended in Gaza. Just 2 weeks after Protective Edge ended with an Ethiopian brokered truce, Hamas is already working to restore the terrorist tunnels in Gaza, and by their own declaration, they're building these to launch attacks against Israel. And other things that they're not disclosing, I know what one of them is, to actually sneak into Israel and to take hostages. We're talking about children. We're talking about women. We're talking about civilian hostages so that they can use this against Israel and against the United States and the world. The tunnels you're seeing are made with building supplies that were allowed by Israel into Gaza in order to build infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and instead terrorist tunnels. This is absolutely outrageous, and now they're demanding $550 million to do it all over again. And this tunnel that you saw underneath a mosque, it makes you wonder, what about the thousands of mosques that are popping up in the United States? What's under those mosques? Well, after all that bad news, it's time to give you some good news, and that's an invitation that I want to extend to you on behalf of myself and my family to join us on our Passover Cruise 2016, April 16th through 23rd. It's called Celebrate the Mystery and the Miracle of Passover. We're on the seas, on the Caribbean. We're going to be actually having a Passover Seder, traditional Passover meal, on board a Royal Caribbean cruise. It's a limited time of offer that we're going to make tonight, an early bird offer. Register now for up to $400 off per cabin. To get more information, you can go to our website. It's www.jewishvoice.org/Passover Cruise to download the free brochure. So I hope you'll join us in 2016 for a Passover celebration. Well, our outreach team just returned from 2 incredible outreaches in Zimbabwe. And I want to share a few pictures with you, what God did miraculously at work among a very specific tribe, the Lemba community. This is a tribe in the remote bush of Zimbabwe that DNA testing has confirmed are part of the priestly tribe of Levi. It's another fulfillment of end-time Bible prophecy. We held 2 medical clinics, and you can see some of these great pictures. First one was in Buhara. They're spread out throughout the bush of Africa, so we had one in Buhara. Over 7,000 patients treated in 5 days. You can see the numbers there. The most important number is that 1,288 came to receive Yeshua, Jesus, as their Messiah. That was followed by another one in a place called Gutu. Again, over 7,000 patients treated over a 5-day period with over 1,700 salvations. So with your help, some 3,000 new Jewish believers in Yeshua, in Jesus. Friends, this is a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, and you help to make that possible through your prayers and financial support. We have some great opportunities for you to join us in 2015. Whether you're 9 or 90, you don't have to be a medical professional. We need your help if you love the Lord and want to reach out to God's chosen people. We'll be back in Ethiopia. We'll be in Zimbabwe. And you can actually play a role on the field in leading people to know Jesus, Yeshua, as their Messiah and Savior. You can make a difference, and God will change your life as you reach out and change the life of others. Here's a short clip of what joining a Jewish Voice outreach is really like. And then when we come back, we'll be taking your prayer requests, praying for those in need live, so stay tuned.
The Spirit moving mightily, miracles, fulfilled prophecy, marveling as Jesus calls his people back to himself in preparation for his return, serving as his hands and feet in far-flung places around the globe. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. The king will reply, I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. This is what outreach is about with Jewish Voice. You can be a part of it. Now is the time. Answer the call. To find out how, call 1-800-299-YESHUA or go to www.pleaseanswerthecall.org.
You can make a difference in just 1 week, and I promise you this, you'll never be the same again. So I want to encourage you personally to join us on one of our 2015 outreaches to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Well, every webcast we take time to pray for the many prayer requests we receive from each of you, and if we don't pray for your prayer request during this webcast, I want you to know that we do pray over each and every prayer request that we receive, each one personally. So we've had many people that have contacted us with some very, very serious needs, and I'll read a few of them to you. And even if you didn't email us your prayer request, I want you to know that God can touch you now, where you are, and no matter what your situation is, no problem is too small or big for God. All things are possible. We have a number of prayer requests for deliverance and family salvation. Bernadine has asked for salvation for her family, healing for her mom. Lily has been diagnosed with cancer and needs prayer for that. We have a prayer from Michelle, who asked that specifically for prayer for the Jewish people in Israel. That's a prayer that God answers, and He encourages each and every one of us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Gail's asked for prayer for her son who's struggling with alcohol and smoking. Sharon's asked for prayer for Chris, who's been diagnosed again after 5 years with a reoccurrence of cancer. And I want to ask you for your prayers as well for my brother Dave in Rochester, who's been fighting multiple myeloma for the last 2 years. And negative report from the doctors, he has to start chemo and radiation again. But I believe in a God who heals, and I know that many of you do too. The Bible says that by the stripes of Yeshua, by the stripes of Jesus, we were healed. When He died on that cross, He paid the price for our sin, but not only our sin, He paid the price for our diseases. He paid the price for our deliverance, physically, emotionally. When He died on that cross, He paid the price for every need, past, present, and future. And I want to encourage you to reach out in faith. The Bible says that nothing is impossible with God, and that all we have to do is to believe. So I want to join my faith with yours. I want to ask you to reach out from anywhere you are and believe God with me as we close the program. By faith, all things are possible. So whatever you're going through, I just want to lift that up to God now and believe. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I join my faith with thousands of people that are watching this webcast tonight, and we pray for these needs that have been emailed in to our ministry, those that ask for healing from cancer, healing from other diseases and illnesses, those that have asked for divine provision, for jobs, for money to pay for a mortgage before they lose their home, for those that have asked for deliverance from alcohol and drug addiction. Lord, we stand in the gap tonight, and we thank you that by the stripes of Yeshua, these people are healed. I pray for people that are watching tonight that are fighting cancer, that are fighting diabetes and other life-threatening illnesses, and I declare over you in Jesus' name, you are healed. Be healed. People are being healed even right now of back and neck problems. Someone is healed of a lung problem right now. Whatever the need is, Lord, thank you for touching them. I speak deliverance. I speak wholeness. I speak freedom in the name of Yeshua. Jesus, by whose stripes you are healed, delivered, and free. Amen and amen. I want to encourage you again that we pray for the needs that come to this ministry, and so you can count on us for that. I want to encourage you to follow us on Twitter. You can sign up now, and we'll send you future webcast information. And you can send us webcast questions using hashtag JVWebcast while live on the webcast. And we are offering tonight Chris Mitchell's book, One Last Time, Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. I encourage you to get his book. Will show the offer again, and we'll close the webcast with another beautiful song from violinist Maurice Sklar. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Shalom, and until next time, God bless you.
Here at Jewish Voice, we are dedicated to proclaiming the gospel, the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, to the Jew first and also to the nations. One way we do this is by providing life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. Even more important than the physical relief our medical teams provide, it also life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. Even more important than the physical relief our medical teams provide, it also opens the door for us to share God's love and the good news that Jesus is their true Messiah. Today, we are actively preparing for our next medical clinic. Our volunteer medical professionals will be providing a clinic for eye surgery, glasses, dental procedures, and specialized medical treatments, all free of charge to thousands of men, women, and children, many of whom have never even seen a doctor or dentist. As we prepare to go, the only question remaining is, how many can we help? Time is of the essence, and your generous gift today can make you a key part of impacting the lives of the precious people of Israel's lost tribes. Will you help? When you respond with a gift of $40 or more, we will send you the latest book from CBN News Bureau Chief in Jerusalem, Chris Mitchell, called Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East. What makes this book different from any other is that it details the prophecies Chris sees unfolding before his very eyes as he reports from the front lines in the Middle East. With it, you'll learn how events making headlines in the Middle East fit into biblical prophecy, why Israel is in more danger than ever before, and how this will impact the rest of the world, and how you can be prepared for history's final chapter, which will play out in Jerusalem. In addition, as a thank you for partnering with us in ministering to the Gafat tribe, we'll also send you this Jewish Voice teaching, Unlocking the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel, Keys to Understanding End-Time Events. This informative DVD with teachings from Rabbi Jonathan Bernis, Bible scholar Dr. Randall Price, and White House correspondent Bill Koenig gives new insight on the pivotal role that Israel plays in the return of the Messiah and on biblical prophecies that are being fulfilled right now and what it means to you. Please call, click now.